If you don't have sales, you don't have a business. I thought that you had to be born with certain abilities.
You have to be pretty good at everything.
Pick an industry, pick a person, and ask about their backstory and ask how much time they put into it. And many will be surprised that it's years and years.
When I first dropped in and started building my practice, I found myself really with my head down for hours and hours building the new accounts forms, the website. I spent enormous amounts of time on marketing material. And all of a sudden I'd stick my head up at the end of a week and say, I only really talked to 5 people.
A lot of businesses fail because purely they don't have the revenue.
And these people who are running these small businesses, they're building a lifestyle around the small businesses before the small businesses are built.
People are learning is that if they have 0 or 1 or 2 conversations in a week, that's not anywhere near enough to grow a business.
Harry, the question is, if you could go back and give your younger self advice, what would it be? Welcome to today's PlanAssist Podcast, where we help people make better financial decisions by interviewing successful people in the community who do all kinds of things from a business perspective and from a career perspective. But one thing that kind of rings true across all of them is they seem to all have some kind of a plan that they follow. They seem to kind of understand kind of the PlanAssist principles of being diversified. And then they're all very, very good at seeking counsel. And so I'll interview different business people across the city or across the kind of Western Orange County and just have a conversation about what they see, what opportunities they see, what challenges they have. And today I am super excited to have as our guest Harry Spaight. He's a sales leadership coach and podcast host who has learned to help teams build business with trust, clarity, and consistency. He works with companies through Sales Index and brings data-driven insights to hiring and performance through selling and through the heart of building a more enthusiastic relationship first sales approach. So with over 20 years of experience, I'm super excited to have him on board and talking about something that almost every single business has to do, and a lot of businesses really struggle with is selling and building that relationship with customers. And one thing that I've known Harry for a while, and I can't tell you how excited I am because one of our biggest challenges with sales is how do we build trust? And that's really one of his specialties. Did you want to add anything to that, Harry, or anything to add on to that?
Well, that's a pretty good intro. And I am 100% with you on the trust. Once you get trust, then there's a whole different type of selling that takes place.
And it's everything, right? I mean, you can't really sell long-term. You can get a transaction out of non-trust, but you can't get long-term selling, long-term relationships without trust. Cool. So did you want to add anything to that intro?
Nope, I'm good. Yeah, excited to be here as well. Thanks, Tim, for having me.
Very cool. Okay, so as everyone knows that listens to our podcast, they know that I always start these podcasts out with the same exact question, and then we'll just kind of build off of that. So, Harry, the question is, if you could go back and give your younger self advice of any kind, so it doesn't have to be financial advice, what would it be?
Well, 100%, Tim. You and I spoke in the green room about this, and I didn't want to let the cat out of the bag, but I immediately knew the answer was going to be having a growth mindset. And I can elaborate on that, but that was not me for many, many years of my life, was having a growth mindset. I was the exact opposite.
Well, elaborate a little bit. Give us some more info on it.
Yeah. Okay. So I thought that you had to be born with certain abilities. So for instance, I played hockey growing up as a kid, and I played into my adult life and so forth, but I never really got really good at it. I was okay at best, but I thought that was the way I was born. I didn't think I could be much better at it. Same is true with golf. I thought, well, this is who I am. I'm a mediocre golfer. Doesn't really matter. So I'm stuck with it. I thought about this as far as business at times is concerned. When I got into sales, I thought at first it's like, I may not be very good at this. Then what? Right. So I just didn't have this growth mindset that if you put your mind to it and put in the work, you could go from mediocre to really good And it's not your natural ability. It's effort and work and more work. And all of that can make a huge difference in people's lives, which I didn't really understand, honestly.
And so to build on that, I actually completely agree with you. And that's one thing that I would kind of rethink. But I have the one thing that I can tell you now that I'm a little bit older and I see people who are successful is we don't see the work they put in to get where they are. And I constantly will hear people say, well, that person did this or that person got, they think lucky. Okay.
Yeah,
But I'm like, you don't realize they did absolutely nothing for 10 years. And all of a
exactly.
sudden you see them pop out. So it looks like they came out of nowhere, but actually they did not.
Exactly. I mean, you find the backstories of musicians, actors, you name the field, and it is tons of work over years to get to where they are. There's no overnight, born lucky, silver spoon in your mouth. It just doesn't happen that way. And, I've never really come across anybody, you think of like someone like Tiger Woods, incredible golfer, all kinds of records. I mean, he started out at, his father had a golf club in his hand before age 2.
Right.
Right. So it wasn't like, well, by the time he was 20, he just took up golf. He has been around the game and practicing for years and years, and that's who he was. So pick an industry, pick the person and ask about their backstory and ask how much time they put into it. And many will be surprised that it's years and years.
So that's an awesome way to kind of get this started. So my next kind of go into is one thing that Harry does is works with all size businesses, kind of small, medium, and large, just depending on what they're looking for. But what I would really like to hear about and hear you kind of comment on is what do you see the biggest challenges with kind of these small businesses that we have in kind of West Orange County, kind of, Claremont, Winter Garden? What do you kind of see as their biggest challenges?
Yeah, I could go down the list, but a lot of businesses fail because purely they don't have the revenue.
Okay.
Revenue solves a lot of problems. And I look at it as, I mean, not to be selfish or anything, but if you don't have sales, you don't have a business. And thinking through that a little bit, what happens many times with a small business, especially when they're trying to grow, the last thing they put effort into is selling. They feel that they could, especially the consultants or anyone who's really starting a business, they could take their trade that they've learned in business and say, I can just bring that into a new arena and I can make all the money instead of giving it to my employer and doing all the work. The problem with that is they've never sold. So without any sales experience, and they think, well, I can just put ads out on social media, I can have a nice website, I can talk to people, networking. It's all well and good. I mean, that's all part of it. But true sales professionals are talking to a lot of people every day. So when you look at the numbers, it's scaled so differently. So if you think of somebody who is selling, they're probably going to have somewhere around 10 to 15 conversations a day, not just 10 to 15 calls, 10 to 15 conversations, which means a lot of calls, a lot of contacts. So over the course of a week, you now are at, say, let's just use round numbers. You're at 50, course of a month, 200, the course of a year, nearly 2,500 conversations. Most people who are trying to start a business don't have anywhere near that. I mean, if they have 20 conversations in a month, let alone in a couple of weeks, that's a lot. If they have, you see where I'm going?
Well,
so yeah, talk to me.
No, absolutely. And I did that. So when I started Core Wealth Consultants 11 years ago, I came from a operational, though I had some sales, I was primarily customer service operational. And so when I first dropped in and started building my practice, I found myself really with my head down for hours and hours building the new accounts forms, the website, okay, here's what I'm going to do. What are the investments I'm going to do? I spent enormous amounts of time on marketing material. And all of a sudden I'd stick my head up at the end of a week and say, I only really talked to 5 people.
Yeah, exactly.
But I was busy, right? I was, and you got to get honest with yourself because that's probably the hardest thing of all the things you do to build a business is the revenue piece.
Exactly. So if you look at someone like Mark Cuban, who is built businesses. And he said recently, I saw a video of him, if he had to start all over, all he would need is a phone. Right? He wouldn't need millions of dollars. He would need a phone.
Yeah.
So that's tells you something, right? This is how people build their empires, is by doing outreach and having conversations. Again, it's not comfortable, but if we think that it's all just going to come to us because we've got a nice website, we're going to hang the sign out, so to speak, have a nice website, have a nice social media presence, we're not in control of our own destiny. We are letting social media or ads and our website hopefully bring in the contacts that are going to want to work with us. But that's where the luck comes in to some degree, versus doing the outreach and saying, look, I need to speak to whatever, small businesses, medium-sized businesses. I need to speak to business owners running companies that have 50 employees, you name it. That requires a little bit of strategy. And all you're doing now is I'm just doing the outbound. I'm going to drive the conversation.
And you're not going to get those people. I say this, I'll probably get some hate emails on this, but you're probably not going to get those people at chamber meetings.
Exactly.
You could run into a person at the chamber meeting.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying you shouldn't do the chamber meeting stuff. So that doesn't mean, that means don't join the chamber. But remember, the chamber meeting is packed full of people that are trying to do the exact same thing you are. They have no money. They're really trying to connect, right?
100%.
So chamber works different than the way people are kind of thought it works.
Right. Yeah. So I love what you just said. I'm a huge fan of the chamber because it gets you some kind of credibility where you're recognized in the community. Now you've got a social media presence from the chamber. So there is some value. Value there, I believe in, like you mentioned. But the thing I say at the chamber, like this is my line, if I do any presentations, I say, how many here would like to sell something? Everybody raises their hand. Then I ask a question, who here wants to buy something? Guess what? Not a single hand goes up in the room. That's the disconnect. If we think we're going to these network events to sell, then nobody's buying. It's the wrong crowd.
So I'll give you my favorite story on the Chamber of Commerce. So I was building my business, right? So I'm 12 years old, so I'm two years into the business. Now, my background is Fortune 500 companies, right? So I spent time at Charles Schwab and Company, at H&R Block, and at Ameriprise. So that was my view of business, right? I mean, all huge businesses, right? And how you succeed in those businesses. So then I'm 2 years into my little solo adventure trying to build my practice. And I got into a conversation with someone, which was the best advice I'd ever gotten. And I bet he didn't even realize it, but we're coffee. And I was telling him, I said, I don't think these chamber meetings, this chamber strategy works. And he starts laughing and he goes, oh yeah, it works. It definitely works. And I said, really? I said, it doesn't work. He goes, you're thinking chamber's a place you go meet people and get some sales. And he said, that's right. And I said, he goes, okay, so stop that and let me reframe what chamber does. If you want to be successful, when you were at Charles Schwab and Company and you were on the phone as a customer service rep, then you wanted to go become a manager, then you wanted to be a VP or a regional manager, then you wanted to go to San Francisco headquarters. And I said, that's right. And I said, that's exactly my career path, right? So all these Fortune 500 companies have what any person that's in those companies know. They have these career paths that you have to work on, and those take 10 years, right? I said, I totally get it. I said, I was very successful in that model, right? I knew how to build my career. He goes, that's a chamber of commerce. And I said, what are you talking about? He goes, if you're going to go and being successful with the chamber, he goes, what you have to do is you have to first start going to all the small meetings as a participant. And then you need to start leading a few small meetings. And then you need to go and lead one of the other kind of outreaches. And then ultimately you need to get on the board of the chamber. And then ultimately you need to be president of the chamber. He goes, that's going to take you 10 years. He goes, that group is incredibly successful with the chamber. So when you hear them saying the chamber has changed my life and I've built a huge business here, they're not lying. They're actually telling the truth. What they're not telling you is the work they did to get there.
Hello. That goes back to how we started.
Correct.
Right? The work behind. It's like, well, you got it easy. You're in the chamber. You're the president. You got it easy.
That's correct.
Right? But 100%, it's the work behind. So yeah, I love it.
So, and I really think a lot of these organizations that people go. So I wrote a book called PlanAssist, okay, about 5 years ago, and it wasn't for the public. So I didn't write this for just kind of anybody. I wrote it really for my clients. I have about 50 households, 80 clients. And I realized that I only get to spend an hour or so twice a year with them. That's about it, right? I might spend an hour and a half with someone, but for the most part, I'm spending, an hour and a half with them, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And there's usually big gaps between these meetings, right? Well, in those meetings, there's always something top of mind for them, right? It's their meeting, it's not mine. So when I go in, I want to ask them kind of, what do you want to work on, or what are you worried about or concerned about? And they'll tell me, okay, here it is. Well, we'll spend a half an hour on that, right? It's
Yeah.
because again, it's not my meeting I get to go tell them about this or tell them about that, or you have to focus on kind of what do they need, and then when they leave, I realize, oh, I didn't tell them the process, which goes to exactly what you're talking about of how do you build wealth and how do you maintain wealth. And so I wrote this short book. And the reason I tell that and set it up is I searched for a year plus on what were the principles that I wanted to share. And I came up with 3 principles. And first, I started looking at everyone I knew who was successful, which has really been my job for 30 years, right? I mean, my job's been help rich people stay rich. Okay, that's really been my primary job. Versus like a Dave Ramsey is how to help people who make money in debt get out of debt, right? I'm the other end, right? I work with people who are already rich. So I know a lot of people, and so I started to say, what are something common across those 3 people, across those groups of people, and I found that there was 3 principles that were somewhat uniform, but not totally. And it was have a plan. They all knew where they were and where they wanted to go. And that doesn't mean a 45-page document.
Okay.
That could just be, I'm here, and in the next 6 months, I want to get here, and I need to do these 3 things in the middle, right? So it can be a 1-pager back of a napkin plan, but they have a plan. Okay. The second thing they are is they're diversified. So they don't put everything in one place. If something goes wrong, they don't completely blow their lives up. And then the third thing, which is the hardest, is seek counsel. And I've gotten feedback from people on this is going to go somewhere when I kind of do to your sales thing, is the third one is seek counsel. Well, seek counsel is so hard because the first 2 are somewhat objective. The third one's much more subjective. And one thing that people who have a lot of money do is they don't see seeking counsel, getting input, getting advice, word it however you want. I got lots of feedback on that's the wrong word, but I settled on, I think that still is the right definition. But that group, they'll reach out to 10 people and ask for input and have no feeling of needing to say no, or I'm not going to do it or anything. They just, hey, Harry, what do you think about that? You say what you think. They're like, whatever. Okay, thank you very much. And then they might have 10 people. They'll go ask 5, 6, 7 people. And they don't feel like they have to tell you yes or no, or they don't take your advice. And people who are challenged, they find that much more intimidating, but that goes to this building of your business, right? I mean, if you're going to get out and sell, you got to talk to a lot of people and be almost curious.
100%. Yeah. Just not almost curious, but yeah, you struck a chord immediately when you said the word curious. This is a huge miss because we're not going deep enough in our questions. So if a person I think I cut you off, but I mean, if a person is asking questions and getting an answer, they typically stop at 1 level, maybe 2. But without going into a deeper dive, you don't get really what is the story behind it. What's the why? So for instance, if I'm in the market for a financial guide, so to speak, and I say, look, I'm looking for a financial planner in my life. I don't have one. And then the person says, great, I'm your guy. I've got this background. I've got all kinds of great companies behind me, or I've worked for the #1 company where we've been around for 150 years. We pay dividends, and they start going immediately into selling mode because someone indicated they're interested.
Yes.
Right. So that's where the curiosity comes in, which I know you would say, well, what makes you think that you need a financial planner? What happened? Where are you in your life that this has dawned on you? What's the story behind it? And they say, well, A friend of mine has a financial planner in another state, and they suggested I start talking to people. So that's what I'm doing. Great. Immediately go into sales mode. Again, not
Yeah.
deep enough. Right. So we
Right.
have to get much deeper to build the trust, or otherwise we become like every other seller where there is no trust and we become a commodity. And the poor person that's looking for guidance says, you guys are all the same. Doesn't matter who I pick because you're
Yeah.
all the same. Because you
Correct.
went from finding that the person is interested to selling how great your company is.
Right.
Right. And that's true across the board in sales, pick an industry, it happens everywhere. And people will say, oh, I'm great at relationships, because they have friends, but they're not great at relationship selling. It's a
That's new.
huge difference.
Right.
Right. It's not just being friends, it's getting to the core, the real problems, understanding what's the drive behind the need, what the person really wants in their life, and solving that.
And sometimes that
Right.
person doesn't know what they want. You have to spend some
Exactly.
time really getting to know them and saying, this seems like a good fit, but maybe it's not. Let's talk about how that might play out.
Yeah, exactly. And this is risk on the seller side because they don't want to push away the person by asking a question that they might hear the word no, or throws off the prospect or something, or makes them think deeper. So that instead of doing that, they don't trust themselves enough. They don't trust that they have enough in the funnel. And so when they have a live one, they go all in on the live one, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of, you don't need to rush. You don't need this prospect. And someone who told me once, I love their approach, is like, I want to sell, but I don't need the sale. And
That's
when
right.
you need the sale, it comes out as this pushy, slimy, it's all about me. I'm
Yeah.
not asking, I'm not curious. I'm telling you about how great my company is. That's someone who needs the sale.
So what got me through a lot of those sales career, I did spend a lot of time selling. So even though I call myself more in operations, but I
Yeah.
spent pretty substantial amount of time selling to some degree. And the one thing that always helped me, and I don't even know where I got this, but I found it to be so true over and over again that even when I had my little dark days, I would come back to this is you're only looking for really one person, but you might have to talk to 100. Right. And the one person will change your life. If you go back and look at all your whys in life, and I don't mean whys, why'd you do something? I mean whys in life, right? Why road, the road. You come to the end, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, that was when I got that job. That's when I got this opportunity. That's when I changed and moved here. And if you'll slow down and think about, well, what caused that? It's usually one person. And that one person in business, that one person in sales, a lot of times can be the linchpin that takes you to the next level, but you can't find that one person without being curious, and you can't be curious. You can't also find that one person without talking to a lot of people.
Agreed. Yeah.
You know,
That's
I
why
mean,
the benefit of having a sales background when you're starting a business, this.
right.
What people are learning is that if they have zero or one or two conversations in a week, that's not anywhere near enough
And
to
it's not
grow
going
a
to make it.
business,
The
right?
other big challenge that I find, and I'm in a bunch of like small groups or men's groups and Bible studies and stuff, and these people who are running these small businesses, they're building lifestyle around the small businesses before the small businesses are built.
Yep.
And what I mean by that is they think, oh, I don't want to work at Charles Schwab. They'll make me work 60 hours a week. I'm going to go build my own business, but which is fine. So if you want to work 30 hours a week and go build your own business, but you have to get the business built.
And it takes, again, time.
10 years.
Right. So,
The whole 5 years is a lie. That's wrong. It's not no 5 years. It's 10.
yeah, there's so much I could go on this of it.
So let's talk about reality, and then we'll kind of transition to AI.
Okay. So, where are we going with reality? What comes to mind for you?
People just lie to themselves. Number one, I mean, it's not even other people; it's them themselves lie to themselves, and they do not only in sales, they do it in financial services all the time. I mean, I talk to people all the time. They're like, I deserve to buy that car. And I'm like, okay, but in reality, you can't afford that car.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, exactly. So I think this is where the great thing, I know it's going to tie into AI pretty quickly, but you talked about people who are seeking guidance. I forgot what the word was. People that are seeking, how did you phrase it about people that your ideal client is? They're seeking wisdom,
have a
counsel,
plan, be diversified, seek counsel.
seek counsel. Okay. So the word that comes to my mind is a guide.
Yeah, exactly.
And right. So having a guide in your life, I made a lot of financial mistakes over the years. I'm not embarrassed about it. I know a lot of people do. I look at it as saying those were I tried and I failed. I wasn't a failure. Now I have a growth mindset. There was a time where I thought I was a failure, but I grew out of that. But let's say I bought a bunch of properties one time, lost a lot of money. That was a big fail. And I was talking to a friend of mine who is now my rabbi, so to speak, my guide. And I said, I didn't know you then. I didn't have anyone to bounce this idea off. I bought the whole thing, hook, line, and sinker. The people were doing mortgage fraud. And I was just in the middle thinking this is the greatest thing in the world, lying to myself because I didn't want to tell anyone. I was saying, Harry, you're pursuing fantasy here. This is going to cost you a fortune in the end. I didn't want to hear that. So that was me not dealing with reality.
Yeah.
So what would have helped? I did bounce it off of some people, but I wasn't in listening mode, right? It's like sort of what you said earlier. They'll tell you something, they really don't want to hear the feedback. I didn't really want to hear it. Let's be honest. I didn't really want to deal with the reality, which was this is not a good move financially. So I had to go through the big mistake and years of anguish. My wife still reminds me, 15 years later, but she loves me. But it's just little digs here and there. If I ever think too cocky or this might be something good to look into, she's like, well, is this anything related to the properties? And that's all she needs to do. And then it's like, oh, yeah, right, reality. Let me get some guidance here on this before I even think about going down this path. So that probably happens a lot. Same is true of the new cars. I'm not a new car fan, but like I'm trying to raise my kids who are now in their 20s. It's like, you don't need an $800 a month car payment just because some advertisement says we're getting rid of these cars and they're the best deals ever. I said, so when you go $800 for the car, 200 or more for the insurance, you're at $1,000 a month. That's an expensive car. And then you think of how many hours a day you're driving. And so then I just break it down. So now that car is costing you $50 an hour to drive. Does that make sense to you? Want every time you want to drive an hour, do you want to give on top of the gas? Do you want to give a $50 bill? Is that what you want to do? And then they start to see the story behind this. But if they didn't have me as the guide, they all would have brand new cars and have massive debt with cars that lose value pretty quickly. And they're not in a position where $1,000 a month is good use of their money at this point in their life, in their 20s. What's your thought?
No, I think what you call it a guide. I spent a year writing this book, and the third one I ended up seeking counsel. But it could have been have a guide, it could have been get input, it could have been be curious. Whatever words there's a bunch of words for that third one. But I will tell you, it's the most common denominator across wealthy people by far. By far.
Incredible.
And you don't sometimes see it as seek counsel. It's things like, I'm curious. It's things like, I think I'm just going to call you up and say, what about this? And you say, and then even when you ask them kind of, well, where'd you get that great idea? Or where'd you come up with that? They cannot tell you who did it. And they're not lying. They sincerely don't know. And the reason they don't know is because they talked to so many people about a particular subject and everyone gave them different or advice. And then they ended up settling on something that was different a little bit than maybe all 5 or 6 people they talked to. But if they could give someone the credit, they would. They just can't. They're like, no, I don't really remember, but it came from. I mean, and the best story that I've ever heard on being curious. So the people who have TDS will turn off here, but the people who don't, before Trump was president, and you can actually go back and watch this podcast, but Ivanka Trump was on the one of the long form podcasts. I can't remember which one it was. And he was talking to her, like just going back and forth, just talking about kind of what are they doing. It wasn't about Trump himself. It was just about Ivanka and kind of what she's doing, right? And it was so fascinating because the minute I heard it, I'm like, whoa, that is it. That's actually where I ended up kind of coming up with this Be Curious from, is she was telling the story. She goes, what did you kind of learn? What was the biggest lesson you learned from your dad? And she goes, be curious.
Mm.
And he goes, and no pause. And if you watch the video, it'll just boom, it'll come right up. And she'll go, you can do it because it's like a faint 30-second thing. And he goes, really? Which he was kind of surprised by that. He goes, well, what do you mean by that? And she goes, well, let me give you a story that is very unusual with people as successful as my dad is. And it's one of the things that I've tried to take. They were doing the post office in New York City. They'd spent an enormous amount of money buying that old post office and remodeling it. And they were putting this atrium in the middle. And what they wanted to have happen was this atrium, they wanted to keep 70 degrees in the atrium all the time. So if you came out of one of the condos or one of the shops, it was 70 degrees, no matter whether it was 30 outside or 80 out or 90 outside, it was 70 degrees. And she goes, this was my first big project as an executive. Okay. So as the executive of Trump Organization, this was my first kind of assigned project to me personally. So I was very stressed about it. And I was working 60 hours a week. And she goes, and we couldn't figure out how to do it. She goes, we were spending enormous amounts of money. And when we would put pencil to paper, we would find that we were going to spend so much money to make that happen that the whole project may not even be financially feasible. Mm. And so that's how she set it up. And she goes, so here's what I did. So then she goes, my dad comes over first, to say, hey, let's go. She goes, he goes, I want to walk the property. And he goes, well, what are you working on? Or what's your biggest problem? She tells him that. And he goes, okay. Now remember, they still have engineers and all this stuff working on it, right? So it's not like this new thing to Trump, right? Well, she goes, we start walking this property, and she goes, all of a sudden, he starts walking up to these heating and air guys that are putting ducts up. And he goes, hey, how's it going? He goes, what do you think about this 70 degrees inside? And she goes, the first 3 or 4 guys were like, I don't know. I just do the duct work and da-da-da. She goes, all of a sudden, she goes, about the 5th guy she gets to, he looks at Trump and he goes, you want me to be honest? And Trump goes, well, yeah, tell me what you think. He goes, you are way over engineering this. He goes, you are so over engineering it to keep it 70 degrees for the few times it's 30 and for the few times that it's 90 in New York. And he goes, it's not going to work. He goes, you need to step back and simplify that process. He goes, I'm telling you, as someone who's putting all these airs in, he goes, it's good for me because I make a lot of money. He goes, but it's not going to work. And he goes, and you're going to spend enormous money and you're going to constantly be messing with it. And her point was, be curious. Mm. Right? It wasn't like he changed directions because of that guy. It wasn't because someone else was telling him something different, but that point about, what about this? What about that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it so strikes the chord.
Exactly.
But this is how you get good in business too.
Exactly.
So you can look at something and people doing it all over and over again. And then you're saying, well, I'm not even in that department. They know what they're doing. But sometimes they need an outsider that raises the question. It's like, why are we doing things that way? That seems complicated. And just the curiosity, I mean, we don't have to put it that way, but what's behind this process?
No, correct.
Right?
Well, exactly. And it's not, people will get turned off by a word. Don't get turned off by the word. It's whatever word makes sense, but it's get input, get suggestions, get counsel. If that's a word, I don't know what word makes sense to you, but it means talk to a lot of people, which takes us back to where we started the conversation.
Yeah. Well, but it's great. And I think it's great about growing your business in the community. It's about hiring good people. It's about having long-term employees, showing curiosity, not how was the weekend? Good. Okay, great. So what we're going to do today is, explore, go deeper, right? Be curious. What's a person's life like at home? What's their family life like? What are their kids like? What are their kids' names? What do they like to do? Right? All of this curiosity just makes the connection so much more.
All right, let's transition to AI. So we'll finish this on AI. So we have about 15 minutes, which we'll go by in a flash talking about it with the two of us on AI. why don't you just start? Spend kind of what do you see as you visit these businesses? Because you're inside, you're kind of behind the scenes for a lot of these businesses. What are you seeing these small to mid-sized businesses when it comes to leveraging and using AI?
Well, some are using it with automation, but I think there's still a lot of opportunity out there for where there's repetitive work. If there's ways that you can use AI, simplifying spreadsheets and things like that. That's kind of all I'm seeing right now. Nothing major, so to speak. I mean, I'm not seeing any AI run robots that are sitting behind desks, taking calls and none of that yet. But the opportunity is out there to do so much more with it. And I mean, I'm a big fan of AI, but I also recognize that I want smart people behind the AI with morals that this doesn't get out of control down the road. I don't think we're near that yet by any stretch, but sometime down the road, who knows what kind of masterminds are going to use things for the wrong
Bad.
ways. I mean, we've
Yeah.
done it throughout history, right? My father years ago said he was an aircraft engineer, and he said something to me when I was a kid. He said, I don't understand why every time we develop something, we have to put a weapon to it. And that's just the way it is, right? It's like we figure out how to use technology, and it's like, well, this would be great in war. Not that I'm saying I'm all about peace and you have to have a defense, but in the wrong hands, that's what concerns me eventually.
Right.
But for small business owners, making your life a whole lot easier, especially the solopreneurs or really small businesses with a few employees, it's like adding to your staff in a big way very quickly, in my opinion.
I read an article that said the fastest growing segment of the economy is solo entrepreneurs or solo businesses.
Yeah.
And they're hiring either people like at Fiverr or at Upworks or and use the combination of AI are kind of how they're building their businesses and making money with the process. It's the single biggest growth segment in the economy right now.
Yeah, I
But the
believe it.
problem that the challenge that is you have to be pretty good at everything. Like of all the things I did, I made way more money in corporate America than I have as an entrepreneur. Okay, because being an entrepreneur has been so much harder. Like I try to explain to people, my last 10 years has been the hardest in business that I've ever spent, even though I made enormous amounts of money in the first 30 in corporate America. Because corporate America was, to me, it was relatively easy. It was like going to school. It had these rules. You just followed the rules. You did extra credit. You did whatever you
Yeah.
wanted to do. That was kind of easy. And you could kind of see where the politics was. And you just kind of did your job. And, that was kind of, you didn't really have to know much about the other departments other than your specialty. Whereas a solo entrepreneur, you really have to do it all.
You
And
do.
I think that's the piece most people don't. I think a lot of people really struggle with that. I don't think that they kind of realize just how much stuff they have to learn to be successful. And I think that's where AI can help them. But
Yeah.
I do think you've got to be careful about using AI as a crutch, right? I mean, like I'll talk to people and I'll say, do you use AI? They'll say, oh, yeah, I use it all the time. And then they start talking. And I don't bring this up, so I don't get into the debate with them, but they're not using AI. They're not even close. Okay. They're using it for spell checking. They're using it for, help them rewrite an email. Yeah,
Yeah.
that you are using AI. So the fact of, if you say, are you using AI? The answer is yes.
Yeah.
But are they really using it to add productivity to their lives? Are they really using it to grow their businesses? No.
Yeah, exactly. So something that's really simple, I'm going to tie it back to sales, is pick your AI, pick the LLM that you're choosing, describe yourself, your business, and you can ask for ideas as to how to grow my business. What are some steps that I can take to grow my business? That is really simple. And then you can say, once it does that, it might give you some things like for instance, it might say, get out and network. You can say, well, I live in Claremont or I live in West Orange. What networking groups should I be looking into? And you can be very specific that way. Then you could say, well, I'm not really comfortable in speaking to strangers. what advice could you give me to help me? And AI wants you to be hooked on it and is going to treat you like a friend and is going to say, well, you can do this. You can come out of your shell. It's going to give you the rah rah, which is what I love. But you can also say, be brutally honest with me. Am I looking at this the right way? Is there something I'm missing? Give me the downsides, not just motivation, inspiration. Give me the downsides of what I'm even thinking about here. I don't have, this is the amount of money I have. These are my bills. This is what I'm paying out every month. This is what I need to live on. What is a realistic time frame to grow this? I use AI like that. It's like my life and business coach, my financial advisor when I don't want to bug my financial advisor for everything. I run something by like, is this a good decision? But things like that, that's how I use it. It's not just, I do use it sometimes. Well, help me make this email better. That's minimal of what I do use it for, if that makes sense. What's your thought on all of that?
I think that's exactly right. I think that's what most people don't. AI has really super positive stuff to it, and it has, really negative stuff. And I can't say that I'm this great AI person. I love working with it. I like kind of how it's set up. But again, I'm a solo entrepreneur, so there's some of the stuff on AI that I have done has taken me way more time to learn to do than if I'd have just done it, right? I mean, now I've learned AI through the process, you know what I mean? So people have to kind of go through and learn. I think that's the challenge that people kind of do, and they'll go and ask it a question. I'll give you a great sales story, and this is actually true. So I have a client who has a decent sized business, and they've had the business for whatever 25 years, and they were just brainstorming on, okay, well, how do we start building the business? So they went into AI and started, here's what do you think about this? And they already had an opinion, right? So they went in and fed AI their opinion, and then he comes back to me and he says, here's what we're going to do. And I said, really? And he said, AI said that. And I said, okay. I said, let's do a Zoom call and let me ask AI a question. And so I went on to AI and we did a Zoom call and he shared a screen. The AI said, hey, go do this, this, this. Okay. So kind of what he was saying. I said, I literally, I'm paraphrasing, but I basically said, what the F are you talking about? This guy has been in business for 20 years. He's sold to 2,000 clients over the last 20 years or some number like that that's in their database. And you're telling him to go out and knock on doors of new businesses or whatever the advice was. I said, how did you come up with something like that when every single business school would say, go back to your current customers first, right? And AI immediately, obviously, right? Oh, you're absolutely right. That is absolutely what we have to do. And I'm just like, come on.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you ask the question? So it goes to kind of exactly what you said. How do you ask the question? And that really matters.
Oh, that's a great story. But yes, you have to question it.
You have to,
right? You
have to almost assume it's giving you the answer you want to hear, and then you have to push back.
Yeah. So I'll use multiple LLMs for that very reason. It's like I don't want to live in fantasy land, but like an example, something that comes here. So I have shiny object syndrome, like a lot of small business owners, and so with that in mind, if I see an ad pop up says I need this, I can run it right, take the link, paste it into AI, and say, what is the story behind this? I do that all the time. Is this any good? Is this reliable? What's the real story? And then AI will rip it to shreds typically. It's,
that's fantastic. That's a great idea.
It saves me a lot of shiny object stuff, which I suffer from because.
So do I. I think all salespeople do, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, you want to grow your business and you're doing something like, so for instance, I'll give you an example. I use AI to take long form video, and I use AI to crop it into small shorts. Now, there's a lot of tools out there that do this, and you could go crazy in buying all kinds of tools. You don't need all kinds of tools. You find one that works. So every time something else comes up that distracts me, I just run it through and say, is this any good? I'm already using this. It's caught my attention. No. And the answer is going to be it's not really any different, or it's virtually the same. Don't waste your time. Those types of things, which again, those that saves me hours.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Right.
You and we sound like we use it very similarly. So again, it's not the silver bullet to growing your business. It's definitely something to become aware of, be knowledgeable about. How's it grow how do you become more effective? But again, like everything, you have to do the work to figure out how it makes a sense. So,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
okay. So with that, give people a summary of kind of what you do, who's the kind of clients you do. We'll finish with just give us people contact. How do they get in contact with you if they want to reach out and get
Yeah.
information?
Well, I appreciate that opportunity. I really appreciate the conversation here, Tim. It's been a blast to say the least. I really connect with you on these topics here. So, what I would do is primarily help sales organizations to grow by understanding their sales team and helping them hire the right people. We do that with an assessment tool primarily, and then we coach using the tool to show where a person needs some guidance in their life, where they've got a lot of strengths, but we want to help them to continue to grow and improve with the growth mindset. And so we do that. The company is called Sales Index, and I can be reached if you follow me on LinkedIn. You'll see my name here. I put all kinds of valuable posts out on LinkedIn. That would be the easy way to follow me is find me on LinkedIn. And looking forward to having conversations with people. If growing sales is what you want to do, that's what I do pretty well.
That's awesome. And finding him on LinkedIn, it's Harry Spaight, and his last name spelled Spaight.
Exactly.
So with that, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the hour to just have this conversation. It's been fun.
This has been a blast.
So, oh, I will add one thing to the end of it is where Harry and I met is at 1 million cups. And I really encourage these small businesses to go to 1 million cups because it's one of those things where you get to present your idea and people will be brutally honest with you. So it's wonderful. It's one of those things where you can get some feedback and some input. And that's one of the things that you and I do have in common is we're active in 1 million cups there in
Yeah,
Claremont.
yeah, it's a great point. But I totally agree with you. And we're brutally honest, but we want people to succeed. So
No, no, no.
we
It's
hope
in
that would,
it's in a very caring way. So
yeah,
I don't mean that negatively. It's in a very. I did one presentation. It was great. I can't tell you how much I changed kind of how I looked at a particular tool that I'm rolling out. So,
nice.
anyways,
Awesome. Well,
thank you
thanks
so
again,
much.
Tim.
Thanks, Harry.